嗨，大家好，我是袋鼠仙母，来自英国，欢迎回到我的频道。现在我在台北，我喝木瓜牛奶，我最喜欢的饮料。那如果这是你第一次看我的频道，你可能不知道，我以前2015年很久以前住过台南，几乎2年。那时候我在成大学中文。从2017年我离开台南以后，我去住别的国家，但是我后来发现，好像台湾这个地方是蛮有趣的，我觉得它很有意思，所以我想多聊一聊这个地方的特色，让人多了解这边的文化。所以今天的影片的标题是台湾有5件事情让我觉得很惊讶。Okay, so I'm just going to switch to English because it's generally easier for me to express myself in a way that's hopefully not offending anyone. Just a heads up that not all of these things are going to be positive. Every place has its benefits and its disadvantages. The first point is that I find that Taiwanese people tend to be really generous. Now, of course, this might be just my experience, but I feel like on the whole, people are really into the gift-giving culture, which I find really, really sweet. Like, as someone who doesn't really come from that kind of background, you know, we only have presents for Christmas, birthdays, weddings, or maybe like a housewarming gift. Apart from those kind of times, you wouldn't really give a gift. And if you did give a really nice gift with like a handwritten note, that would be like, wow, you've really gone above and beyond to make me feel like you care about this relationship between us. So I think that's really sweet. Now, it did give me a bit of pressure in the start when Taiwanese friends would start to give me little gifts and write notes to me. I was like, I feel like I can't return this favor because I'm just not used to it and I almost don't know how to in a way. So I would try, but always feel like I was falling short and they were always the better gift giver in the relationship. But to be honest, it's not really just gifts either. I feel like people are very generous with their time and their attention almost. There's a lot of emphasis on this kind of like guanxi, I suppose. Now I want to mention about this present game thing that I heard about recently. Apparently it's very common for people in Taiwan at Christmas to exchange gifts, but they're usually crap gifts. So they'll find some rubbish, like random stuff from their house and then swap it, draw a number, and then you get to pick a gift and it will be something kind of funny, which I think is like a really nice way to exchange gifts. Recently I've been doing something similar with my family at Christmas. We do this present game where you have to roll a dice and then according to each number there's an action that you have to do. For example, number 1 might be pick up a present, number 2 might be exchange a present with someone else, number 3 might be steal a present from someone. So by the end of the game when all the presents are gone, maybe one person has most of the presents and someone else has none, but it's all just fun and games. It means there's less waste, I feel, than regular Christmas present giving where everyone gets loads of presents and not necessarily all of them end up getting used. So it's kind of like a different way of doing this present game thing, but I wouldn't say that this present game is like really common in the UK. It's just something that we found and have been doing recently, so that's quite fun. 第二个令我觉得很惊讶的事情是台湾人对外国人感兴趣。I feel like most places I've been to, people aren't like, wow, you're from somewhere else. I want to learn about you and your culture. I just feel like that doesn't happen so often in other places as much as it does in Taiwan, which is obviously, as a foreigner being in Taiwan, that is just lovely. It feels like a genuine interest that people want to get to know me and where I've come from. And obviously I can't avoid the fact that there's obviously like historical reasons for this, like white privilege and stuff, which I'm definitely a recipient, so people who are from other places in the world might not receive such generous treatment here. Now I feel like I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole here. Obviously not everyone in Taiwan is going to be like that. Some people are going to be more or less interested than others. In the UK, sometimes it seems like because there's been so many people from all around the world in London for so long, it's almost like people have become a bit numb to it sometimes. They're like, oh, I want to go traveling to this country to experience that culture, rather than being like, hey, there's this guy down the road, we could ask him about his culture. He's literally a living, breathing person who's come from that country. Why not just talk to him about it? But yeah, I guess it's just something that people have become used to and it's a kind of different way of interacting with people, I suppose. 第三个让我很惊讶的事情是迷信. So lots of people in Taiwan, I think most people actually tend to be very superstitious. And this is not limited to one specific like belief or particular thing. There are so many things that people are very open about and just, you know, the possibilities are endless for like what could be possible, which I think is really cool because to be honest, we don't know why we're here, what we're doing, are there gods, like we don't actually know any of that stuff. So I think the fact that people are really open is really cool. Just to give you a few examples of things that many people believe in, we've got 卜卦, which I actually did the other day. I've only done this kind of 算命 sort of thing a few times before. 算命 is like fortune telling and 卜卦 is like an ancient Chinese method of fortune telling. So they give you like 3铜钱, like old ancient coins and then I had to think of my name, my birth date, where I live, and then shake the coins, ask a question, and then put them on the table 5 times, and then she would mark down each combination meant, and then she would tell me about the answer to my question, I suppose. I'm not going to tell you what the question is because that's a secret. When I started listening to her, I was like very open. The first thing that she said, "Oh, is the person you're talking about like this?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "Oh, okay, let me check again." And then she was like, "Is it like this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then so she went down that path. And so I was thinking, was this like a random lucky guess? And she found something that was correct and then just ran with it. But anyway, everything that she said after that point was like 100% factual, I believe. And I was listening intently. And I was wondering, is the fact that I'm nodding and giving her some positive signs, like giving her more clues as to what to say next? Is this a con, basically? That's what I was thinking. Is this a con artist, and has she somehow found some magic trick to make people think that what she's saying is true as a way to earn money? That is like the first thing that I go to as a British person, because you might know that British people are very, very suspicious of anything that's not science, cold hard science. This is most people. If you mention things like tarot, most people will be like, It's not necessarily a good thing, because I feel like it closes people a lot to thinking about interesting ideas. They just instantly think, oh, well, it's not real, it's not true because it's not science. And I guess regardless of whether this stuff is true or not, it's still interesting to think about how different people see things differently, I suppose. So some other things that Taiwanese people tend to believe in are different types of shen, like gods. So we've got Cai Shen, Yue Lao, Ma Zu, and different kinds of gods that if you pray to them about a specific problem, then they will help you in the future. Lots of people that I've spoken to have said that it's sort of about getting in touch with your subconscious. You've almost given yourself that intention, and so then when it comes true, like maybe it was the god that helped you, but maybe it was you yourself who decided that that's what you were going to work towards. Some other examples of, I guess, superstitious beliefs are shou xiang, which is palm reading. I've seen people do that on the streets, and I really wanted to try it, but the queue was too long, so I actually couldn't. And then also xing zuo, so your horoscope. Now, when I first arrived in Taiwan, this was one of the most surprising things to me, because my friend said, "What's your star sign?" And I said Gemini, and she was like, "Oh yeah." You could just see the recognition in her face of like, she knows what kind of person I am. And I was like, you don't know who I am. And I checked online about the description of Gemini, and it was like freakishly factual to what I believe my personality to be like. So it seemed very accurate, and I started to read more about other horoscope signs, other star signs that my friends have, my closest friends, and they also kind of seem pretty accurate. So again, I'm particularly open about this kind of stuff. Lots of people in the West will say, yeah, but they describe things in such a general way that you're more likely to be like, yeah, that's me, because it's phrased in such a way that anyone wants to believe that they are, I don't know, reliable or kind or sociable. It's just interesting the degree to which people in Taiwan tend to think about these concepts and ask people what their star sign is and discuss these kinds of ideas. I've totally jumped on the bandwagon with that now, because if something happens, let's say I get bored and want to move, go to a different country, then with another friend who's Gemini, I can be like, you know, it's the Gemini thing, and they'll be like, yeah, totally understand. And the last example is 紫微斗数, so astrology. This is another thing that is quite deeply embedded in Huaren Wenhua. And this is not even to mention like Zhongyi. There's so many things that I feel there's like a rich tapestry of beliefs and ideas that the average person here tends to have, and the way that they link together, and different like philosophies or things to draw on to describe things that are more abstract, which I think is really interesting. I feel like there's so much to talk about with that topic. Like, what do you do if you get a negative fortune telling? Is that going to change what you do with your life? Like, how do people respond to this kind of stuff? I wish we could talk about another time, but just the fact that lots of people regularly do swamming, that is fascinating. The next point on my list is to do with the traffic. And I'm just going to talk generally about the traffic, why it's a little bit surprising as a foreigner in Taiwan. So first of all, pedestrians don't have that much right of way. The reason this is kind of more surprising in Taiwan, I suppose, compared to lots of other countries in Asia, is because when you arrive in Taiwan, it feels like a very modern, like very much developed country. You know, the roads are all, you know, perfect and whatever. But as a pedestrian, if you're trying to cross the road, basically need to be quite brave. You usually walk in front of the car before they will stop. But the thing is, like, the drivers, they do see you and they will stop usually, but I suppose it's that question mark of what if they don't. I know it is getting better, and there's a lot more awareness about this in Taiwan now. Like, the government's introducing new kind of measures to help like traffic problems. Drivers now have to say out loud, there's no one in front and there's no one to the left before they make a left turn, so as not to crash into someone. I know that that's just what most people here are used to, just the same as in the UK. We're used to going to a zebra crossing, and as soon as you approach that zebra crossing, the car will slow down and let you cross. And it's not because they're being nice to you, it's actually because it's the law, and that's what they've been taught to do. Traffic jams, very intense traffic jams during the holidays here. I've been through this myself, and I can say to you from first-hand experience, do not travel on a Sunday between cities when it's a public holiday the following day. I was stuck in traffic for 7 hours going from Yilan to Taipei. I thought I knew traffic jams, like London, the M25. There's pretty bad traffic there a lot of the time. Nothing like Taiwan. Again, I know they're making efforts to try and improve this. One such example is that if you're traveling between cities during the holidays, you have to have at least 3 people in your car, obviously to reduce the amount of cars on the road. I didn't actually realize this, and I was in the car with one other friend. And so we got to this bridge and someone came and they were like, can you wind down your window? And then as soon as they saw us, they're like, oh, 是外国人. And like, you know, 他们听不懂. Yeah, so we just went. So that's the positive side of being a 外国人 in Taiwan. Another thing that continues to surprise me, but that I've noticed a bit less this time in Taiwan, is the quality of the lights inside people's houses. Usually they tend to be big, bright white lights, almost like you're in a hospital. And for me, I feel like, oh, that's not comfortable, because the lights that we're used to having in our houses in the UK are the low, kind of more orangey coloured lights, which are a bit like softer on the eyes, I suppose, so sort of like dim lighting. Now, I know the reason that most houses have these proper white lights in Taiwan is to help your eyesight, so you can actually see things properly. I myself am particularly sensitive to bright lights, so sometimes in people's houses, you know, it's supposed to be a comfortable like evening dinner or something, and I'm like, it's so bright in here. Okay, and last point here, I know I said 5, but I'm just gonna give you a freebie. Things are sometimes really cute. Like there's a big building and then there's a rabbit there. You're like, oh cool, why is there a rabbit? I mean, obviously like, cause 图年, now I know. But something like really boring, just a boring kind of construction sign. And they've made it cute, like with little cartoon characters, or like, you know, big round faces with the 2 eyes. And you're like, oh, so cute. 差不多就是今天我想分享的内容，我希望你觉得有趣。如果你不同意我的看法，当然没问题，你可以在下面跟我分享，我很好奇听你们的意见。好，那我们下次再见，拜。